this space launch system is probably the most expensive rocket. Is it the most expensive rocket ever? It is quite pricey. This thing costs how much money do you think it costs to launch this rocket? 5 million, 10 million? What if I told you that to launch a rocket of this size, it's not even in the million scale? This thing cost $4 billion. $4 billion. Not only is it $4 billion, it's $4 billion per launch. Per launch. Every shot it goes, it's $4 billion. What one go is basically you are shitting golden bricks up into space. That is insane to me. And the reason why I feel so strongly about this is because the sheer existence of the SLS was mandated by Congress. This was commanded to be made after the space shuttle actually got dismantled and destroyed, meaning this is required to be built and is more likely, more arguably, a jobs program than a rocket program. To give you some perspective, Starship, which is what SpaceX is working on right now, they are trying to reach the same capabilities as this SLS system, and they are very competitive. Actually, it looks like Starship will be able to reach the same levels of operational capacity as the SLS, and even more maybe. And you know how much those guys are projected to cost per launch? It's 10 million per Starship launch. Every launch, it's 10 million. It's literally 100 times less. Over. The fact that this costs $4 billion a launch is criminal to me.
Today, we stand on the threshold of a new golden age of space exploration. The first of 3 missions that will see humans return to the moon for the first time in 5 decades. The SLS, or Space Launch System, today rests on the stand, waiting to ignite its engines, taking the Orion capsule on a journey around the moon. This is an exciting launch for any true aerospace enthusiast, but legitimate questions about the SLS have been raised, questions about its very existence. In an era of innovation that has allowed the private space industry to drastically reduce the cost of launch, why is NASA building its own, completely unreusable rocket? Why?
It's true. It's true. I've been to this facility. It looks really amazing, by the way. Actually walking in through here, and then how it all comes apart. Really cool looking, and reminiscent. Hello, welcome in. Thank you for the follow.
Why has it cost so much money to manufacture, and why does it exist?
Is that Boeing? Guys, it's ethical to hate Boeing, by the way. I'm sorry. I have such a hate boner. I have such a hate boner for Boeing. They literally... This is what happens when you get a bunch of project managers who don't know anything about the technology, and they come in and they ruin your tech. Oh god.
So much money to manufacture, and why does it exist at all? The SLS is a massive rocket, building on not just the legacy of the Saturn program, but the Space Shuttle program.
This is a really sexy rocket. Sorry, I'll be pausing a lot, but I like design-wise, it looks really good. I'll give them that. I love the design.
Borrowing concepts and actual parts from each system, the SLS uses 2 solid rocket boosters. Together, they will produce more than 75% of the rocket's thrust at launch.
Like this. This is a thrust test. So they actually have a force sensor here, and this is a giant concrete block that is tied to a metal thing below. And it is so cool to see one of these go. Amazing.
Thrust at launch, burning 5 tons of propellant every 6 seconds and providing the equivalent thrust of 14 4-engined 747 jumbo jets.
Also, by the way, with this rocket thrust here, like this rocket test, because it's a solid rocket booster, this is going the entire time. It can't stop. Once you start it, it has to use all its fuel. So unlike liquid rocket tests, like Aerojet tests and all that stuff, they can actually throttle it after turning it on for maybe like 30 seconds. This runs for the whole duration.
Burning 5 tons of propellant every 6
I don't know how
seconds,
much force it produces.
providing
Quite a
the
bit, I'm
equivalent
sure.
Thrust of 14
No ideas.
4-engined 747 jumbo jets each. These
14
boosters
jumbo
are
jets.
essentially the same boosters that flew on the space shuttle. In fact, they are using many leftover parts from the space shuttle program, with some updated designs to the nozzle and an additional 5th booster segment, giving this new
footage.
generation booster 25% more fuel capacity over the shuttles. However, unlike the solid rocket boosters of the space shuttle, these boosters will not be recovered and refurbished. In an era where we can literally fly our boosters back to the ground, this seems like a strange choice. Why did NASA decide to go this route? To understand that, we have to look back in time. 2 programs were cancelled in 2011.
The answer is not an engineering one. By the way, spoiler alert, the reason why we don't use reusable boosters for the SLS is not a technical one. I'll give you that. It's not a technical or scientific or engineering one.
The Space Shuttle program and the Constellation program. We are all familiar with the Space Shuttle program, but the Constellation program is less known due to the fact it only ever flew a prototype rocket. The Ares prototype flew in 2009 and tested the Orion launch abort system. If that name sounds familiar, that's because Orion is the same spacecraft that will be flying on top of the SLS. The Orion spacecraft was originally designed for the Constellation program before its cancellation in 2011. In fact, if we look at the final planned Ares rocket design, the Ares 5,
Wait, I need to remind myself, what is the Constellation program? It was basically Artemis except with extra goals. Yeah. This is when we had faith in space and we cared a lot about it and wanted to continue investing into it. Also, Chimera, thank you for the follow. Welcome into the space station. Hi.
design, the Ares 5, it bears a striking resemblance to the SLS. That's no coincidence. Just as parts from the Space Shuttle program were scavenged for the SLS, designs and employees were taken from the Constellation program. We see this pattern play out throughout the SLS's design. The giant orange installation-covered core stage, containing 2 gigantic propellant tanks holding.
The orange is insulation, by the way. This is like layers of insulation. I don't think this is a ceramic tile design. Yeah, it's not. It looks like it's some sort of wrapping that they wrap around. And just like in space fashion, the budgets for these things blew way out of proportion. It's very expensive to send things into space. That's why it's one of the markers of a very stable and powerful world government, right? Like you need a very stable economy in order to support something like this.
Propellant tanks holding 2 million liters of liquid hydrogen and 742,000 liters of liquid oxygen will be feeding 4 RS-25 engines. These engines are not only the same design used in the space shuttle, but they are literally scavenged from previously flown space shuttles. The 4 engines,
Wait. Is it not a new engine? We didn't redesign an engine since the 1950s? Oh, tell me it ain't so. Okay. Wow. Also welcome in Nico died. I don't know how to say your name, but thank you for the follow. Hi. Yeah, we're looking at the space launch system right now. It's the same engine design in the 70s. Okay, that's a little bit better. But considering we have things like the Raptor 9 engine, that makes me feel things. Oh goodness. And Wes, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. Hi.
Artemis 1
It's just Nikki. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My brain is focused on rockets right now.
Artemis 1
it is a
these serial
rocket.
numbers, and from that we can track their flight history. These engines have a rich history within NASA, bringing components of the ISS to orbit and flying astronauts to Hubble to repair and maintain it. These
cool.
are tried and tested engines that, in theory, would save NASA money. But
okay, look at this engine here. It is complex as hell. The modern engines have reduced part count and therefore risk of failure down tremendously. Let me find you a Raptor 9 rocket engine. This is the design improvements that have happened with modern rocketry. This is the first rockets that are based off of the 70s technology. This is the second layer of rockets. This is the third. I agree it looks sexier with the paint and all that stuff, but really, the big innovation is getting down all these parts. Every single one of these is a failure point, right? Every single failure here, every part here can fail. They're pushing pressurized cryogenic fluids. They all have to be vacuum sealed. They can melt. Things can hit them, and oftentimes they do fail. So the lower your part count is, the significantly more tolerance or tolerable it is to any sort of mishaps. That said, the reason why this design was made in the first place is because it makes it very efficient and technically performant. The engineers who first made these engines aren't stupid. They weren't crazy. It's just they had different priorities. They prioritized elegance and performance over repeatability and stability. So they cared more about getting more oomph from their rocket than they did about making sure that it could be reused and very stable and cheap to produce. Cost was not a consideration in the early rocket program. So because of that, you end up with things like this over here. Where is it? This one. You end up with things like this over here, where this guy is working on that same like 70s era technology rocket with a bunch of highly complex components during an era where cost was not an issue for designing rockets. They only cared about performance. So I will say this is a very performant rocket. It's tried and tested. It's reliable, but the complexity is very high, and therefore the costs are really high. Yeah, so they really were like, spend all the money we want. Yeah, exactly. And there is a time and place for that. There is a time and place. But it's hard to argue it now. And Castiga, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Hi. Money.
Save NASA money. But oddly, the SLS program's greatest criticism is its cost, running up a bill of $23 billion.
It's $23 billion in the hole. God damn. Yeah, it's $4 billion per launch. It's $23 billion as a program overall. This is the coolest tech progression I've ever seen. Yeah, it's really cool. I like to see it. What is it? There's a good quote. Science that is sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. And I kind of agree. Like, as we move more and more to more technically advanced stuff, things start to look a lot more magical. They look like, whoa, how does this even work? It's like a wizardry thing.
When Barack Obama released the US government's budget in 2010, the Constellation budget showed all zeros.
Reaction.
The program was effectively cancelled. Obama's vision for NASA's future was for collaboration between commercial space partners like SpaceX, while shifting.
Okay, where was that frame? Where is the frame? Okay, that's the main cabin, and then they go through this. Is this what I saw? Oh, here it is. This is ULA. ULA is the main launch partner that NASA had planned to have, and also a company, I believe. They are not doing too hot. They're in some hot shit. They're going through layoffs right now. They have crazy delays. Their leadership is in question. Just a little tidbit from the space industry. ULA is not in a good spot right now. They've been embarrassed by other companies.
Obama's vision for NASA's future was for collaboration between commercial space partners like SpaceX, while shifting NASA's budget and focus to projects which were not commercially viable. A vision that has largely come to fruition today. So, if the Constellation program was cancelled in 2010, how is this resurrected Frankenstein's monster standing on the...
Don't call it a Frankenstein. It's cute. The rocket's cute. Yes, it might have Frankenstein parts from many different eras taped together, but it's cute and pricey.
pad today, ready to launch to the moon? The answer? Politics.
This legislation will define NASA's future by building on its past.
Obama's cancellation of the Constellation program was met with criticism from politicians from all over the United States. The elevated costs of the program was partially by design. NASA gained support in Congress by spreading jobs all across the United States, ensuring widespread support by the constituents of the politicians in each region.
That is a huge part of the core problem of the SLS project. The thing is, Congress votes on the budget. They decide, hey, we are going to allocate X amount of dollars to our rocket program. Also, by the way, when you're throwing this on your docket to vote, congressman or woman, if you vote for this, I, as part of NASA's head, I'll give you, let's say 2,000 jobs to build a rocket booster. You know, I mean, like, if you say that we should spend money on this, I'll give you some jobs. The problem is the representative, the politician, does not care how much this costs the nation. They care about providing jobs and income to their individual state. And when you go around and do this to multiple states, you end up with some Frankenstein monster that has parts constructed in 20 different states instead of one, and having everything shipped together to be constructed in another state that then they can build even more. And any delays and all that stuff actually makes more money and gives more employment time for these people. It makes it very hard to vote against.
When the Constellation program was cancelled, it left thousands of people without work. People were understandably upset. This forced the Obama administration to backpedal, resulting in the NASA Authorization Act of 2010 being signed, providing NASA budget to both commercial space launch industry and, in effect, brought the Constellation program back from the dead under a new name, Artemis. The Act even specified that NASA needed to reuse technology, contracts, and workforce from the Constellation program. And so, here we are, 12 years later, with the ghost of Constellation flying to the moon, itself a Frankenstein's monster of space shuttle components. This is clearly not an efficient way of developing a rocket. Cancelling one over-budget project and then bringing it back a couple of months later with added design restrictions. That's perfectly obvious to anyone and everyone involved. It's just how bureaucracy in a democratic system shakes out sometimes. Could that money have been better spent elsewhere? Absolutely.
Yes.
Would it have been spent in NASA without the intentional cost inefficiencies? Probably not. This was a jobs program where we get an incredible rocket as the output.
To be fair, I want to be very clear that I am happy that we have the SLS. It is great that we have a working rocket that goes to the moon reliably. Like, this is a reliable, super cool rocket. The fact that it costs $4 billion a launch, that's kind of, it hurts me a little. It hurts me a little inside.
The SLS, despite its inefficiencies, is undeniably cool. The sound of solid rocket boosters is something I have dreamt of experiencing. I don't think anyone with an honest love of aerospace can look at this machine and not be in awe. It looks like someone asked Midjourney to create a hybrid of the Saturn V and Space Shuttle. And perhaps that's nostalgia for an era I was born too late to experience, but that era took us to the moon. I have a tattoo of Buzz Aldrin on the moon on my leg.
Oh my gosh, this guy's a super fan. Damn. I'm also in the same boat. I was not there during the Apollo era.
To say I'm excited is an understatement.
Hello,
This
Plushie.
machine, if all goes to plan, is going to take us back to the moon.
I'm gonna be going to watch some of these launches. I'm not gonna tell you when or why, though. Anyway,
The progress happening in the commercial space industry following hot on NASA's heels, we will have cheaper, heavy lift rockets capable of taking us to the moon and further. NASA won't need to funnel money into a project like this again, instead, being able to focus on projects like the James Webb Telescope. This is an exciting time in aerospace and human spaceflight after a lull of more than 50 years. Times are changing. This is a
really
stepping
exciting.
stone to a permanent human habitat on the moon, and maybe someday Mars. I grew up watching documentaries about the moon missions, always with a little bit of sadness that I didn't get to experience that live broadcast with the rest of the world. Documentaries like Hack the Moon, Armstrong,
Cute.
and Crisis on Apollo 13 felt like watching a Marvel movie. Real-life superheroes. You can relive.
they really are real life superheroes. Like the people they select to be astronauts are insanely accredited and well liked and charismatic. It's actually crazy. But I will say for the rocket, like the SLS, it's a nice stepping stone. And to be fair, when this was signed into law 10 years ago, SpaceX was not really a thing yet, and no one knew if the private rocket industry, the private space industry could compete. There were some people trying to do it, but it was very up in the arms if, hey, is this even possible for an individual company to do? Because this is an extremely complex and expensive engineering feat. That said, it turns out, yeah, private corporations can do this and they're willing to because there's money in it, you know?